This is Scott Spears, and today we remember legendary actor Sherman Hemsley of the Jeffersons, who passed away at age 74 on July the 24th. In her first interview, we will be talking with Sherman's longtime manager and friend, Flora Enchinton. Flora, how are you?
I'm doing good. I'm doing okay. Maintaining myself strong. I have to.
Flora, I know some of this interview will be difficult talking about your friend Sherman because I know he was more than a client. But let's start out this way. Why haven't you spoken to anybody since his passing on July the 24th? I'm sure you've had calls.
I was not in a emotional situation, to be able to talk to anyone. And at that time, it was impossible. I was, it's a nightmare when you go through that, and it's just no words to describe what you go through.
I want to talk about the man before we get into any of the other things that have happened since his passing. How did you meet Sherman Hemsley?
We met around 20 years ago or so, and it was kind of a business thing. I have a daughter that Sherman was in love with her voice, and him and Kenneth were very interested in her and in managing her, and that's how we met.
What kind of guy was he off camera? We all think of him as George Jefferson. What was he like? What was Sherman Hemsley like?
Sherman Hemsley, if I would describe Sherman Hemsley, if you could describe the word love and the meaning of love, that's how I would describe Sherman.
How did your relationship go from he and his manager wanting to represent your daughter to you being his manager?
Well, we became close friends, the three of us, and they saw a lot of potential as far as my ability in business, and I don't know, they liked my personality, I guess, and the ability to actually do business and negotiate the business and, get them quite great deals. And that's basically how it was.
Had you ever done anything like that before?
As far as that, well, in, business, no, not in the entertainment business, no. But, business is business. Every business is basically, it's really the same. It's just how you handle yourself and how you handle the business, and when, how your ability to talk to people and the way you see the business. So it's basically the same. I would say any business is the same. It's just all up to you.
When you met Sherman, you had to have been aware of him from the Jeffersons. What was it like meeting him?
The first time I met Sherman? Is that what you're asking? I'm sorry.
Yes.
How was it to meet Sherman? I'll be very honest with you, and I'm not going to lie. I've really never been so much in the entertainment business, or interested for that matter. So I wasn't impressed, I admire the fact that he was this actor that I saw not quite a lot because I was never been too much into television or that world whatsoever. So when I met him, most than anything was the fact that just him. He was just so simple and a beautiful person. You could just feel the humbleness and the simplicity of a human being, and that's what I attracted me very much so.
How good an actor was he?
I'm sorry?
How good of an actor was he, in your opinion?
In my opinion, as far as an actor, I think he was extraordinary. He was literally born with the ability. And like I've always told him, he had that gift. He was born with that gift. He was very real. And it just came very natural to him.
What role do you think Sherman would have been most proud of?
What role would Sherman would have been most proud of? I don't see him having any specific role, but truthfully, if I would have to choose one, I would say playing fire when he was a little boy, because that was his very first one. He liked innocence and the beauty of children, and it's just when there's just so real and haven't been untouched with from the world and the pain and the destruction of everything that goes on in the world. When you're young and you're so little and you're so innocent. And I think I would say that. I mean, he always would love to tell that story. So I would say that was the one, definitely, that he was the most proud of.
Flora, when was the last time Sherman worked? What was the last piece he did?
The last one that he did was when we were in San Antonio. We went and we did Ain't Misbehavin', and that was in January. And we ran that for a month and a half, like 6 weeks.
And was he enjoying himself?
Oh my God, he was definitely having the time of his life. His preference and his love for music, just amazing, and that he enjoyed doing. So there was, this is a musical piece, so he just loved it. He loved doing that.
Did it ever bother him that first and foremost, no matter what he did, that people were always going to see him as George Jefferson?
It's hard to answer that because Sherman never let anything bother him at all. He was just so easygoing. Though he really did not like to be called George Jefferson. He really didn't. He always would repeat to people that would address him to that, it's Sherman, my name's Sherman. So, but no, I don't think it bothered him because, like he always told me, these are character roles that he played, and people loved them, and they grew up with them, and he respected that. And whatever people wanted, Sherman would give it to them. I mean, the dance, as you know, is very important to them, and they always wanted him to, do that dance, Sherms. And Sherman always did. Sherms always did that dance for anyone and everyone.
Flora, this is kind of the part that nobody's really talked about yet. He was performing in January and left us in July. It seemed like such a shock to us all. What happened? Could you kind of take us through what happened after Ain't Misbehavin' up until the time of his death?
Okay, see, after Ain't Misbehavin', we were dealing with the situation because, I was doing business, we were doing business, and we had our other business partner, Kenneth, with us, which had, he suffered a stroke some years ago. And the three of us would always be together and carry him, Sherman and I, anywhere we went. It was always the three, and we never ever would leave him. And so we were dealing with Kenneth, and I had a situation with my mother, which my mother was very ill at the time, so I had left her with my sister when we left to do Ain't Misbehavin'. Like about 6-7 days later, she had a stroke. So in between, luckily, I had a couple of days where we were not doing anything in the play, and so I took that, flew over to El Paso, made arrangements for my mother to be taken care of, then flew out there back to San Antonio after those 2 days after I was done, and we were there, and so at that time I had to be in between doing the business and taking care of what was going on over there with my mother and taking care of Kenneth. And the thing is that, a couple of weeks down the line, and it kept moving where my mother got more ill. And she developed pneumonia where she was, so I had to transfer her back to Sierra East, and by that time, time was, we were doing the show, and it was moving on, and so when we were done with the show, we flew back immediately. When we came back to El Paso, I went ahead and I took care of the guys, settled them, and then came in, just took an overnight overnight bag, and went to go live about 3 weeks and a half in the hospital, trying to save my mom's life. So in between, I was in the hospital, and then I was with the guys back and forth. So, and Sherman was right by my side all the time, just supporting the fact that, going through the whole ordeal with my mother, that she was going to be okay, and that she was. They finally they went ahead and did a procedure on her where they opened her valve, and she was not a candidate for open heart surgery, and she was in a situation that if I took her home, she would die, and if I went and did that procedure, she was going to die. So it was very difficult to make that decision when they're not giving you any, death is the only outcome they give you. So I remember Sherman calling one of the times when I was with her at the hospital, and he said, Flora, he says, you know what? He says, go for it. He says, Sherman was a very spiritual person, very spiritual. And he had this ability where, he was so spiritual, he would just meditate and feel things and knew what was the right thing to do. So, he called, he told me, go ahead and, say yes, and which I did, talked to the doctor and accepted the procedure. And the funny thing is that, when they did the procedure, the doctor would have settled to go ahead and open just a 15%, 20% of the valve for her to be able to live. The funny thing was that, they went ahead and opened the valve to 100%, and that was unheard of. Never. It was like a miracle. When my mother came out of the procedure, she was like she was like a fish that was put back in water, and she was breathing, and Sherman was so excited. I was so excited. So anyway, the thing was that she was able to leave from the hospital, so then, the thing, became, again, the same routine with the guys, and, just he loved music. We were planning on doing projects, a few different variety of projects, and we were working on them. Both Sherman and I, and with Kenny, and that's basically what we did, back to normality and trying to adjust everybody, and continue trying to make everything as normal as possible at that time. And Sherman, he loved the music, so basically that was, we were structuring, because we wanted to do the Ain't Misbehavin', and we wanted to take that on tour, and practicing some more on that, and other things that we had structured. Sherman wanted to do this thing where he was very, very set on, and it seemed, to some extent that it was so important to him that he wanted to go ahead and do the Our Father in segments. where he would use in his voice, and he had a very unique, distinguished voice that was just so powerful. And he wanted to do the Our Father and explain the meaning of each, segment, and that was very important to him. We were working on that, and anything that had to do with spiritual beauty, and again, I repeat myself, music. Sherman's love was the biggest thing was music. Even more so than even more so than that was his first love, even more than acting or anything to that matter. It was literally music. What was his love?
Flora, it's interesting. He left us on July the 24th, and recently, matter of fact, right before we tape this interview, TMZ has released that Sherman died from lung cancer. Up until this point, it had been reported that he died from natural causes at age 74. They have said on their website that they have obtained a post-mortem report somehow, and that according to the report, Sherman had been advised to get chemo and radiation therapy before he succumbed to the illness. Flora, I know you just saw this minutes ago. First and foremost, is the information accurate?
The information is accurate. It definitely is, but what blows my mind, and I'm very distraught, is the fact that I have not even signed the paperwork, we haven't gotten the death certificate because I need to sign it in order for them to proceed with that information. So, it's very eerie, and things like that have been happening where, I don't know why that is happening. It's very disturbing to me for the fact that right now I'm dealing with so many things, and my first and foremost and most important thing right now is making sure everything is done the right way for Sherman, as far as his funeral and what is going to be done for him. And like I said, I still have my mother. I mean, she still has her illness, and I've got Kenneth on the other end as well. And it's hard. It's very, very hard, and I wish that would be respected. But I guess you have no control how people are. And it is what it is.
Since now that we know that Sherman did pass from lung cancer, when did Sherman know that he was ill and that something was wrong?
Well, literally, what had happened was that one day Sherman just developed this. It was just like a swelling, and so that particular day, I rushed over, and we went ahead and we went to the doctor. It was already closing time, and from that moment, we did not get there in time to see the doctor. So I told him, no, let's go to the hospital, because it was, it was somewhat swollen. It was, his face was swollen. He never wanted to go to the doctors. He just did not like doctors, period. And as a matter of fact, that would, upset him very much. And so he did not want to go, and literally I had to, tell him no, convince him. I said, they're not going to do anything. They're just going to check you out because we don't know if there's an allergy or something, Sherms. I said, we're just going to go in, and it's nothing. I said, it's just, they'll give you medicine or whatnot. So we drove to the hospital, and when we got to the hospital, as we were driving, we went to the hospital. We got there. As we went into emergency, I took him into emergency. And as we went in there, the first thing is, the nurse came out and whatnot, and they wanted to go ahead and take some blood tests. As a matter of fact, Sherman did not want any blood tests. And he says, no, you guys are going to, you people start right away with your blood. And, I mean, he really did not, he just never did like doctors. And so I just remember that I looked at the nurse, and I just kind of, made a sign for her to just don't do the blood test right now. And I told her, well, just get the doctor, so, if you could see him, please. And when he did, when the doctor came in, and he started asking questions, and he asked, certain medical questions, if he felt this, if he felt that, and whatnot. And then the doctor said that he checked them, and he said, well, we're going to have to take a variety of tests. And at that time, also, again, Sherman was upset, and that's the time that I told him, I'm like, Sherman, they need to make it's nothing bad, nothing's going to be wrong. They just need this, because if they need to find out, it's probably just, again, something simple. I said, it's no big deal. And so they did. They went in, drew blood, and then followed with some other tests. They did some x-rays and some other stuff. And so when the nurse came in, with the results of the blood test, and she said they looked beautiful. At that moment, Sherman and I got really excited. And we were, even laughing, and I'm like, see, you're spoiled, and he's laughing, and we're just joking around. And it just felt good, relieved. And right after that, I went, I told him I was going to go outside for a second. I went out. A few minutes, came back, and I see the doctor kind of leaning on top over him and telling him something. And I just see Sherman's face was, he was looking at him, and he was upset. He was surprised. He was, I don't know what, but he seemed something was going on, and I just remember him telling him, listen, don't tell me anymore. Don't tell me. Tell Flora. Talk to Flora and tell her. I don't want to hear anymore. And then at that moment, I'm like, what is going on? What's wrong? What's happening here? And the doctor's still in the room where Sherman was. Then that's when he told me. He says, I'm sorry. I'm explaining to him he has a mass, and it's huge, and it's in the lung. It's covering his lung. And I told him, I said, let's go outside. Please. I said, let's go out. Took him out of the room. And at that moment, though, it was hard for me, because I needed a few seconds to compose myself with the news. Just remember standing there, and just remember seeing, and it's tough, it's tough to take. I don't know. Anyway, we went outside, and I talked to him, and he showed me the x-rays. And when I saw the x-rays, the right lung, as opposed to the other lung on the left lung, it was totally, you could see that the right lung, it seemed like it was dark, and there was nothing there on that side. At that moment, you just feel like you're in a dream, like you can't grasp, the situation. It's tough. It's hard.
Flora, when was this trip to the hospital? Do you remember what month it was?
I don't right now at this moment. Would say probably like the last of May or the beginnings of June.
Oh,
at that time.
That shorter time ago.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Oh, yeah. It was something. Yes.
Had Sherman ever been ill before that?
Never in his life. Sherman was the most healthiest person alive. Never. I remember, I would say 3 years ago. 3 years ago, Sherman started what you would call, there's a book, as a matter of fact, it's called the Mucilus Diet. And it's a diet where it's based on, all healthy, just nothing but, it's a very strict diet. And he got himself, and Sherman had a way about him that whatever Sherman did, he did totally, I can't explain it. I mean, he did it to the max. I mean, he was just so dedicated. He never stopped until he accomplished what his goals were. So he took that diet very seriously, and he lost weight. I remember he was always after me with that he would tell me, Flora, I'm telling you, you got to start this diet because, the mind, it just feels so, it cleanses everything, and you just feel, so good and so clear-minded and this, and I'll tell you, because honestly, it was amazing to look at him, looking the way, because it was like, he did even look like 20, like if he took 20 years from him. I mean, he looked good, and he felt good. So that was Sherman, his ability of, as a matter of fact, at that time, we went ahead and did this, we did this thing with Tyler Perry, one of the episodes. And as a matter of fact, one of the producers, Reuben Canyon, which actually also was one of the producers back in Amen, he asked me, he says, what have you guys been doing with Sherman? Seems like you put him on a time capsule. I mean, he looks so young, so good. And basically that's actually what he had been doing, and that was his ways.
Flora, had Sherman ever smoked, or was there any lung cancer in his family? Was there any cause for this?
As far as smoking, I know that Sherman used to be a smoker at a very young age, and I do know that he had stopped smoking, and I would say 25 years ago.
When he was diagnosed there in late May and early June, did the doctors think there was anything that could be done to fix this or help this?
No, that right there was the worst nightmare of all, because of the fact that from the very beginning, the first thing that was done to Sherman, because the swelling, actually, the reason for the swelling was because of, it's what you call the Vena Cava syndrome, where there's an artery, the tumor is growing, and it's literally oppressing that vein, and that's stopping right there. That's causing kind of like the blood flow, which actually was causing the swelling in his face and his neck. And so the first procedure that was done was an amazing doctor, amazing cardiologist, which was actually the doctor that saved my mother's life. And Sherman admired and loved that doctor because of what he had done for my mother. And so he's the one that did the procedure, and he put a stent on Sherman, and took him in, and that procedure was done. So at that moment, I don't know, call it dreaming or call it whatever you want to call it, but to me, I don't know, I was waiting, I remember outside in the hall when they had him, when they were doing that procedure, and excuse me, when the doctor came out after the procedure, I was waiting for the outcome, and the doctor looked worried. I mean, I know this doctor, and there was a worried look on his face, and he told me straight out. He said, Sherman is not going to live long. Sherman doesn't have no more than a month and a half, 2 months to live.
Did Sherman ever know that?
Oh, yes, definitely. From the beginning.
When he knew that...
From the beginning, the doctors, I'm so sorry,
Oh, no
doctors
problem.
are
Go
very,
ahead.
that's the thing, Scott, in my heart, doctors, that's one of the things, they want the patient to know, and they feel that, and I guess in a sense, it has to. I don't know what to make of it. Sometimes is it they have to know that, definitely, because the story follows where, I'll explain later, but go ahead to your question. I'm sorry.
When he found that out, that here going from performing in the beginning of the year and feeling fine when he went to the hospital, except for this little bit of swelling, to he only has a couple months left to live, how did he take that in?
How did Sherman take it in? He had a way about him that in the beginning, I guess, I don't know if it was really him trying to comfort me, or me trying to protect him. It's just that it was just so unreal to both of us, and I had to maintain myself strong. But literally, the thing is that Sherman's way of dealing with him, Sherman always used his mind. Whatever he put in his mind, he put out there.
Flora, what was the last month of his life like?
The last month of his life, he just wanted to be with Kenny and me and him. And we spent hearing music and just trying to have the more, normal life and be positive that, he wanted, what Sherman always wanted and expected from me was just give him that, be positive, never negative.
Flora, it's kind of interesting. I've done an interview with Marla Gibbs, who I understand was a showbiz friend. He didn't tell anybody. Marla didn't know that he had this or that he was going to pass. Did he tell anybody?
He didn't want to. He didn't want to tell anybody for the fact that Sherman went with the I would say mentality. See, because this is what the doctor told us. The last time we were there, the doctor specifically told both Sherman and I that there was absolutely nothing that medicine can do for him, due to the fact that it was one of the rarest cancer, and it was rare, and it was aggressive, and there was nothing absolutely that could be done. Sherman at that moment, that was when, because it had been Sherman's decision what he wanted to do. He wanted, due to the fact that radiation, had been an option, okay, but it wasn't an option to cure him. It was an option. Well, it was an option. I mean, and so the thing is that when radiation was brought up, at that moment, whether he was going to have it or not, was totally going to have to be Sherman's decision. For the fact that that's one of the things that Sherman and I talked about, and I told him, I said, Sherms, I will be by your side at all times. We'll pull together through all this. I said, but this is your life. This is your body. This is not a business deal. This is not, this is your life. This is your body. I said, and nobody knows inside your body or what, you would want to do or try more than you. And whatever you decide to do, I said, you tell me, and we'll just do what you want us to do. I said, do you want my opinion? What I would want you to do? I said, we can talk about that, but I can't make that decision. And I couldn't. And so the thing was that we talked about that, and I asked him how he felt about that, and literally, because I wanted to. It's difficult decisions. I mean, you want to try anything in this world, anything. But then at the same time, you can't choose, especially something like that, and especially being in the situation where Sherman was, to go ahead and put him through, something like that as far as me making that decision. In no means would I ever do that. So it was basically, we talked about that, and the thing was that Friday, he went ahead and he told me, he desperately said, you know what, I don't want to, Flora. And honestly, from the beginning, he would get very upset because he would tell me, Flora, that's poison in your body. That's literally poison what they put in your body. And,
Flora, when he passed away on Tuesday, July the 24th, can you tell us, I understand it's personal, but could you tell us the last time you saw or spoke to him, what it was like, and was he feeling okay under the circumstances? What was it expected that it was going to happen that quick?
We never thought about it happening whatsoever. Sherman and I held on, to the fact that we just said, no, it's not going to happen. We tried everything as far as he wanted to go back to just healthy food, which he did. We did a lot of juicing, a lot of just organic vegetables, fruits, and just healthy food. Again, I mean, he did it so like himself, and he ate very good. And something funny about Sherman, and he would tell me, and then he would tell me, he would tell me, Flora, what if I have cancer? If I have cancer, why don't I feel like I have cancer? Why don't I feel sick? And that was rare.
He never had a bad feeling.
He never. This is what he wanted to understand. He wanted to make something of, as far as, and that was very rare, because this is what he could not understand. If I have cancer, he would tell me, why don't I feel like I have cancer? He would say, what does cancer have to feel like? And this is what was Sherman ever, because my dad passed away from cancer. My brother this past December passed away from cancer. And my brother's death was very fast and quick too. And but my father's death was my father did. He suffered. He and I saw the pain in cancer, but I don't know if my dad suffered from cancer, or if the pain was from cancer, or if it was because my dad did have chemotherapy and radiation. And I saw him through that year, wasting away, and the way he died. But so, I can't say that literally Sherman did, go through the same thing my father did. Never. He enjoyed his music. We talked for so much. Kenny, him, and I, we lived the same life, and he kept saying, at moments what would bother me more than anything were the swelling. on the upper part of the body. But then we would go ahead and, I had taken him to the primary doctor, and also the primary doctor had talked to him. Again, and I remember he gave him medication, and then Sherman told him, and he says, I don't want any radiation. I don't want any chemotherapy. And, he gave him water pills. He gave him also some medication. And that's basically the water pills, and, would kind of help to bring the swelling down. And that was it. But this monster, whatever it is, and it's just it's very hard to describe. You could see it. To me, it was just mostly the swelling. The swelling really was what would bother. The only thing more that would bother him. Other than that, it was Sherman. What he was doing, literally. I mean, he sang. He would practice his opera exercises, and sometimes, I guess, was I dreaming? I just didn't even think about it. I kept just making him happy the way he wanted, what he wanted. I just did everything that he wanted. There were moments, especially on the swelling, where I'd get frustrated, and from the very beginning. I told him I had done research. MDM Anderson, some other maybe natural clinics where he might, had nothing to do with radiation or something that maybe he would try. And quite many times I brought it up. But I had to bring it up in a soft manner where I wouldn't, frustrate him, because he just didn't want to, and I would tell him, I'd say, Sherman, why don't we just go ahead? Let's try MDM, MD Anderson. Let's try to see, just so they can see you, something. But he would just say, no, sorry. He says, I feel good, and this is gonna work, Flora. I know what I'm telling you. This is okay, Flora. We're gonna be okay. And that's how it was.
When was the last time you saw or spoke to Sherman, and what was the tenor of that conversation?
Well, the night that he died was the night that, it was the same routine. Prior to that, in the evening, was just doing the same routine. Doing everything that, basically would do. Just get everything, give the guys, take care of them as far as Kenny, change him and feed him and whatnot, and make sure Sherman too as well, that he ate, and we just hung around, and, and it was just an everyday evening, really, basically. And that day, there was something, though, that day. Something was just different. After he passed, I look back at that day, and it was just different. That day was different because of the fact that earlier that evening, when I was there, I had my mother there with him. But that was earlier during the day, like maybe 12 in the afternoon or 11, I don't know. But I had been there, taking care of things, and I had my mother sitting down there, and my mother loved him. He loved my mother, and also Kenny. And she was there with him, and she was holding Kenny's hand. I remember seeing him, and that was my mother while I was doing all the things I had to do. And Sherman had come out of the room, and he was happy to see her, and he was hugging her and whatnot, and spent some time a little bit of time, and then he would go back to his room. And then when we were leaving, when I was leaving to take my mother back, as we were leaving, Sherman said something that was to me, it was kind of awkward, because he said, Flora, he says, I'm glad Emma came and you brought her today. He said, because she was able to bless this home. But, I'm always running and doing this, so I just, at that time, I just didn't take it as anything, really, And then, so I said, okay, Sherman, I'm going to go ahead, run, take my mother, and then be right back. And that's what I did. I was back later that evening, and again, that's when, we were spending that time, and again, doing all the things and running and whatnot. And he said something to me. I remember that he was kind of like more quiet that night. Something about him, like I don't know, it's like those things that when at that precise moment you really don't think, especially if you're busy or you're doing this, but then later on you think about how funny, how things really were different, and you just don't realize it at that time. But I remember that like one of the times when I was in the bedroom with him and doing some stuff and I was changing his bed. I remember that he says, God, Flora, he says, how do you do it? He says, how do you do it, Flora? He says, how do you do it to go ahead and always try to keep things together, and you do this and you do that, and you still somehow, with so many things, having to do so many things, you still manage to keep it together, Flora. He says, you must be exhausted. And I remember saying, you know what, Sherman? I said, yeah. I said, yeah, he said, my body might be, I said, and it might hurt. I said, just like your body hurts too, and how you feel, and I do. I said, but you know what, Sherman? As long as we never let our spirit hurt or break, I said, we're going to make it. We're going to be okay. I said, we will be okay. And then I remember telling him, the thing about me is that I said, if only I could sleep, I said, just sleep a little bit, a few hours. I said, I'll be fine. I said, I'll be fine, Sherman. And then he told me, he says, Flora, you do need to sleep. He says, and you're going to sleep. That's the funny thing right there. And he said, you're going to sleep, and I need to sleep. And we both are going to sleep, and we're both going to be okay. And, but again, we're having a conversation about, because I can never. And then, this is funny, and I'll never forget this. See, every time, for the longest time, that we were always together, and this actually started happening when we were in San Antonio. We have this thing about putting the song for the three of us. And the song is, it's called Unbroken Spirit by John Anderson. And he loved John Anderson. And that song, he would always put it when we were together, and he played it a lot. So he continued more so than ever as we would struggle to go ahead, and when either I was running, doing things, and we were there putting, things, he would always put that song over and over to play it. It was like something about that song with us. But he was doing it, he would always play that song when we were there during the, at the time we were just doing things, but this time it was different. This time, I remember that at the end, that he said that when, again, when back to the thing that he said, we both, we're going to sleep and we're going to be okay. Then he looked around the room, because it was already at the end. And then he looked around, and then he looked around, and he was looking at everything, and he said, okay, he says, okay, I have this there, and everything that I had would position everything exactly the way he wanted it. Is all his necessities. Okay, my water is there, and he kept looking at the room, thing by thing, and he just kind of took a look through his whole room, right? And I'm standing there, and he looks around, and he says, okay, everything is in position. He says everything is good. And he turned around, and then he opened his arms, and then I opened my arms, and he just hugged me, and I hugged him. And I said, okay, Sherman, I said, I'm going to leave. And at that precise moment when I said that, he hits the button and he plays the song. This time it was different, because it wasn't in the beginning like he always did it. This time was when I left, and he never ever had done that like that.
Flora, there have been several claims in the tabloids since Sherman passed that have been unfortunate, but I think we should address, because sometimes the tabloids certainly are not accurate, and internet rumors also regarding Sherman. One of the rumors was that the reason he lived in El Paso was because he was taking care of his former manager who had a stroke. Is that an accurate statement?
That he was living in El Paso because he was taking care of his former manager?
Yes.
No, that's totally not true. He was not there because he was taking care of his former manager. He was there because he was in El Paso, because that's actually, that made him happy. Because who was here was the people that he loved, which literally was Kenneth and myself and him. It was the three of us. And that was one of the reasons why he was here. My mother she's older, and I've never wanted to abandon her whatsoever. So that's one of the reasons. But the thing is that, we made a life here, and Sherman was very happy here in El Paso. People have always given him what he always wanted, which was that peace and simplicity that he loved so much. And he loved that. He loved to be real.
There was another rumor, Flora, that Sherman had been involved with drugs to some degree. Did you ever see anything like that?
Drugs with Sherman? Never. I was with Sherman for many, many, many years. And this drug thing that they always keep saying, no. I never saw that. Whatsoever.
The other two that they have said are probably the most prominent. The one that has followed him for a lot of years was that he was broke, that he was in financial ruin, that he had declared bankruptcy, I believe, in 1999 or 2000. Was there any truth to that?
Did he declare bankruptcy? Yes, he did declare bankruptcy. Mm-hmm. But as far as broke, no, Sherman was broke in the sense of how, because for Sherman, broke would mean somebody that, if you're talking monetary things, that to be more specific, I think to me, Sherman was never broke because Sherman had all the money in the world that really meant to him. not in a monetary way, but to him it was just all about love. And in that matter, no, I would never say that Sherman was broke. Sherman was, the wealthiest man alive because he had love. And that is, that's the most important thing to him and to us.
After he did declare bankruptcy, he worked. I mean, he did other things. Was he financially okay at the end?
Financially, if we're talking into financially, I mean, we were fine. I mean, we were fine. It wasn't like, my God, we lived, financially, as far as having, if we're talking about having a mansion in Beverly Hills, he was not interested in that, or having a mansion here. That wasn't Sherman. He was never into the bourgeois, of what makes people happy, or insecurities because they want to see themselves in a certain standard that they are, up there, and they want to be admired by everyone. Everybody, the first thing they want to know is, all about material things. What did he have? What did he drive? How much money did he have? The one thing Sherman hated was especially that. Because, the vanity, and it was so empty for him. And that's why we really see it. We've never been able to figure out that, to him, that's something that, no, I mean, we were very comfortable, didn't lack for anything. It was okay. I mean, we had each other, and as long as we had each other, I mean, there were hard times, there were good times, but as long as we had each other, we didn't lack for anything. We didn't need, or we didn't want anything.
Flora, there have also been rumors that he and co-star Isabel Sanford, who has also passed away in 2004, did not get along. Is there any truth to that?
That is totally untrue. Sherman loved Isabel very, very, dearly. He loved her. That's totally untrue. And it's sad to hear things like that because especially, when somebody wants to make a story or a comment, as long as it's true, well, by all means, you want to go ahead and do it, but don't lie. Don't lie and don't hurt people like that, because, no, that's not true. Sherman loved Isabel, very much so.
The internet regarding Sherman Hemsley for a while, and one of the main rumors has been that he was gay or bisexual. What is the truth behind that?
The truth? He was neither nor. He loved everyone in the whole world. So, therefore, as far as, as a way and vicious in the way whoever's trying to put that, obviously, is people that are obviously frustrated that wanted to probably date him, or, and they're probably upset because Sherman never gave him the time. Could be.
And very well could. Did he ever regret not getting married and having kids?
He always told me that as far as the children, he would always say, why would I want to get myself into problems? I'm happy the way I am. We would talk about that. As far as children, he loved children. Oh my God, I think that's one of the things he loved the most, if any, was the innocence of children, because he would always tell me about how, when you're young and you're little and you're so innocent and you have not been corrupted by the world. So as far as him having children, no, he never had any intentions whatsoever or regretted having. On the contrary, he was happy that he never did. And the reason for that is that he would always tell me that why would he even bring more children into this world to suffer, especially the way the world was. He was never going to do that. But I'm pretty sure that if he would have ever, oh my God, whatever child would have come into this world that would have been his, that child would have been the luckiest of all, because he would have been amazing as a father.
Flora, the final question I have on all this, and I certainly thank you for your time and honesty here, with the way things have been handled, much like the TMZ article coming out, announcing what he died from, announcing that he had refused chemotherapy and radiation, the things that have been released to the tabloids that do echo truth in some way that you have not released. How does that make you feel? What do you think is going on there?
You know, Scott, it worries me. It worries me very much because of the fact that I feel that needs to be investigated, because that's very, very odd, and there's been a lot of things that have been very weird that definitely need to come out on the surface, and definitely that they are. But I just feel that this is private information, that it's inside the system as far as how they literally got their hands in this matter. I mean, it definitely needs to come out, because it's a very serious matter, and I just don't get it, and it's scary at the same time, because if they were capable of that, for what reason was it done? What were the intentions? What are they thinking? What are they doing? Why are they doing this? There are so many things that have been done, and you know, it makes me just feel very uneasy. You know, very, very uneasy. I mean, nobody was around whatsoever on our turmoils in life, when we struggled and when we went through everything, whether we struggled or not through our lives. It was us three. It was trying and whatnot, but nobody came to help us. No one ever came to ask if we needed help, if everything was okay. On the contrary, if anything, I think people were pretty upset. Some people, to the fact that they literally would see us as kind of weird, that we would carry Kenny everywhere we went, that we didn't care, that whether, no matter what anybody thought of us or what, I mean, this was love. This was a genuine love between the three of us. And if anything, I mean, you know, they criticized in a sense, because to them, I guess in their bourgeois world, it's like, oh my God, a man in a wheelchair, this and that, and we didn't care. Kenny was going to be with us, and is at this moment. He's right here next to me, and I continue and will continue helping him unconditionally, because regardless of what, that's exactly what we've always done, and the story has not ended, and it's not going to end until Sherman puts the ending to it. And believe me, I don't feel in my heart that he has gone anywhere. I just feel that he has grown tremendously, and that, you know, he's bigger than ever now, because Sherman is Sherman, and, you know, his spirit is just too beautiful.
In my opinion, one of the most underrated actors of all time, and we're going to have those videotapes and DVDs and certainly memories for a long, long time to remember this great actor. Flora, I can't thank you enough for joining me. I know this has been tremendously hard. I know you're not only his business associate, but a longtime friend, and I wish you nothing but the best. I thank you for coming on, and I think you served Sherman rather well over his lifetime.
Thank you, Scott. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. And maybe somewhere, you know, somewhere near, and we can definitely have another interview, and maybe I will feel a little stronger, and I could definitely be able to explain a lot more things that need to be explained, and the world needs to hear about, most definitely.
Well, I
And I thank you, Scott.
Thank you, Flora. Take care.
You too. Thank you.
Bye-bye.